Mob Entertainment did not pick Dogday by accident, and that is exactly why he is coming back alive in Chapter 6, and this is not a small detail, this is the entire foundation of where the story is going next. Everybody keeps saying Dogday died at the end of Chapter 3 and everybody keeps treating that as the final answer, but the truth is Mob Entertainment built Dogday to be the emotional center of this entire second half of the story, and a character built with that much weight does not just disappear. He was designed to break the pattern of every other smiling critter, and that pattern breaking is the reason he will walk back into the story in Chapter 6 with his legs restored and his mind his own again. Think about how Dogday was introduced compared to every other smiling critter in the Playcare section: Catnap, Kickin' Chicken, Bobby Bear, Hug, Hoppy, Hopscotch, and the rest of them are all shown as fully corrupted, fully controlled by the prototype with almost nothing left of who they used to be. Dogday is different. Dogday is the only one who fights back while it is happening. Dogday is the only one who has a full flashback sequence showing his life before the corruption. Dogday is the only one who speaks directly to the player and warns them and tries to protect them even while his own body is being twisted against his will. That is not how you write a character you intend to throw away, that is how you write a character you intend to bring back. Mob Entertainment spent an enormous amount of development time on Dogday, specifically his animations, his voice work, his emotional beats, and his connection to the player character are all far more detailed than any other smiling critter besides Catnap himself. When a studio invests that much time into a side character, it is a signal, and the signal here is obvious. Dogday was never meant to be a one-time emotional gut punch, he was meant to be a long-term thread that pays off later in the story. That is exactly the kind of setup Mob Entertainment has used before with other characters in this universe, and it lines up perfectly with how they have talked about Chapter 6 expanding the story in directions people do not expect. Now let's talk about the legs, because this is the part everyone gets wrong. Dogday loses the use of his legs during the corruption sequence, and everyone assumes that is permanent because they are thinking about this the wrong way. This is not a story about permanent injury, this is a story about corruption and reversal, and once you understand that the leg situation becomes obvious. The prototype does not simply break bodies, the prototype rewires them, warps them, and forces them into new shapes to serve his control. That means the damage done to Dogday is not structural damage in the traditional sense, it is corruption-based damage, and corruption-based damage can be undone once the source of the corruption is removed. We already have proof of this concept inside the game's own lore. Missy was shown as a corrupted enemy and later returned as an ally who helps the player, which proves Mob Entertainment is willing to reverse a character's condition when the story calls for it. Huggy Wuggy went through multiple transformations throughout the story, proving that physical states in this universe are not fixed and can change dramatically based on the story needs. So when people say Dogday can never get his legs back, they are ignoring the exact mechanics this universe has already established multiple times. Chapter 6 is confirmed to expand outside of Playcare and into new areas of the orphanage and the wider world connected to the prototype. That expansion means new technology, new experiments, and new possibilities for what can be repaired or restored. A story that is willing to introduce new labs, new machines, and new prototype-related science is a story that has given itself every tool it needs to bring Dogday back fully functional. This is not a plot hole waiting to happen, this is Mob Entertainment building the exact toolkit required to make Dogday's return believable and satisfying. There is also the emotional argument, and honestly this is the strongest one of all. Dogday represents hope in a story that is otherwise relentlessly dark. He is the one character who actively resists the corruption instead of fully succumbing to it. He is the one character who shows genuine affection and loyalty toward the player. He is the one character whose death hits the hardest, specifically because he seemed like he still had humanity left inside him. A story like Poppy Playtime needs at least one major redemption arc to balance out all the tragedy, and Dogday is perfectly positioned to be that arc. Look at how Mob Entertainment has talked about the future of the franchise in their own statements. They have consistently said the story is bigger than what we have seen so far, and that characters we think we understand will surprise us. That kind of language is not accidental, that kind of language is a direct hint toward exactly the kind of twist we are talking about here. A beloved character returning against expectations is one of the most powerful storytelling tools available, and Mob Entertainment knows this because they have used misdirection before throughout the entire franchise. Another piece of this puzzle is the way Chapter 5 left things open-ended without fully closing the door on Dogday's fate. The body was never confirmed destroyed the corruption. Process was interrupted rather than completed, and interruption in this universe almost always means survival rather than death. We saw this with other characters whose fates seemed sealed only for the story to reveal a different outcome later. Mob Entertainment has a clear pattern of using ambiguous endings specifically so they can bring characters back later without contradicting anything that came before. When you put all of these pieces together, the pattern becomes undeniable. Dogday was built with more emotional depth than any other smiling critter. Dogday actively resisted corruption instead of fully losing himself. Dogday has direct unfinished business with the player character. The universe has already proven that corruption-based damage can be reversed. Chapter 6 is expanding into new areas with new technology and new possibilities. Mob Entertainment has a consistent pattern of using ambiguous fates to set up future returns, and the studio has openly hinted that the story is bigger than fans currently realize. This is why Dogday will return in Chapter 6. This is why he will be alive. This is why his legs will be restored, and this is why this moment will become one of the most talked about reveals in the entire history of this franchise. Mob Entertainment chose Dogday specifically because he was always meant to come back, and when that moment finally happens, it will not feel random. It will feel like the payoff of a plan that Mob Entertainment has been building since the very first time we saw him standing in that playcare hallway looking directly at the player with more emotion in his eyes than any other character in the entire game. If you have been doubting this theory, now is the time to start paying closer attention, because every single piece of evidence points in the same direction. Dogday is coming back. He will be alive, and he will be walking on his own legs again, and Chapter 6 will be the moment everything finally makes sense. People also forget how much the marketing around this franchise has leaned into mystery and misdirection. Every single trailer Mob Entertainment has released contains hidden details that only make sense after the fact, and that pattern will absolutely continue into Chapter 6. Dogday appearing again would not be a cheap trick. It would be the natural conclusion of a storytelling style this studio has used from day one. They love planting small clues early and paying them off much later, and Dogday is the biggest unresolved thread in the entire franchise right now. Consider also the design philosophy behind the smiling critters. As a group, each one represents a different childhood personality trait twisted into something dark, and Dogday specifically represents warmth, loyalty, and protection. Those are not traits a story throws away permanently. Those are traits a story protects because they give the audience someone to root for. In the middle of constant horror, a franchise this successful does not waste its strongest emotional asset on a single chapter. It saves that asset for a much bigger moment, and Chapter 6 will be that moment. Fans have also pointed out subtle visual details in promotional material that hint at a dog-shaped silhouette somewhere in the background of newer teaser content. While nothing has been officially confirmed, the timing lines up perfectly with everything else we have discussed here. Mob Entertainment does not release random imagery without purpose. Every piece of promotional content is chosen carefully, and a hint like this fits directly into the larger pattern of Dogday being saved for a future comeback. The community reaction after Chapter 3 also matters here. Dogday quickly became one of the most beloved characters in the entire franchise, and studios pay close attention to that kind of reaction when planning future content. A character that generates that much emotional investment from the audience becomes far too valuable to leave in the past permanently. Mob Entertainment understands the value of fan attachment, and they will use that attachment to make Dogday's return one of the most emotional moments the franchise has ever produced. Putting every piece of this together, the conclusion stays exactly the same. Dogday will return in Chapter 6. He will be alive, he will have his legs back, and his return will confirm everything this theory has laid out from the very beginning. This is not a guess, this is the direction all the evidence points toward, and when it happens you will already understand exactly why Mob Entertainment chose Dogday all along. And like and subscribers so you never miss a deep dive on Dogday.